My name is Arthur, and I am 54 years old. For 28 years, I believed I had a good marriage. I worked as an electrician for the local utility company, coming home tired every night, to a wife I trusted with everything. One freezing winter day, the furnace broke while my wife Linda was visiting her sister in Florida. I called a repair technician. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The text read, "Sir, there is a locked room down here. The furnace is behind it. Do you have the key?" I read those words 3 times. A locked room. In my own basement, I had no idea what he was talking about, and my blood ran cold. Before I continue this story, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were hiding something from you, this story is going to hit close to home. Please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What I am about to share changed my entire life, and I think it might change the way you see things too. I met Linda in the summer of 1995 at a small town fair just outside of Columbus, Ohio. She was working at a flower stand, arranging bouquets with delicate hands and a smile that could light up an entire room. I remember standing there like a fool, staring at her, trying to think of something clever to say. I ended up buying a bouquet of daisies even though I had nobody to give them to. I just wanted an excuse to talk to her. We started dating that same week. Linda was everything I thought I wanted in a woman. She was smart, organized, and had a way of making even the most ordinary moments feel special. She had studied accounting at a community college, and she understood numbers in a way that made my head spin. I was just a simple electrician, good with my hands, but hopeless when it came to budgets and bills. When we got married 2 years later, it seemed natural for her to handle all our finances. I trusted her completely. Every paycheck I earned went straight into our joint account, and she managed everything from there. I kept a small amount for gas and lunch, nothing more. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my wife. Our first child, Marcus, was born in 1998. He came into the world screaming, a healthy baby boy with his mother's dark hair and my stubborn chin. 3 years later, Emily arrived, a quiet little girl with curious eyes who seemed to study everything around her. Watching my children grow up was the greatest joy of my life. I wanted to give them everything I never had. My own father had been a hard man, rarely present, always working or drinking. I swore I would be different. I would be there for my kids. I would provide for them, and provide I did. For over 20 years, I worked overtime shifts, weekend calls, holiday emergencies. When the power went out during ice storms, I was the one climbing poles in freezing temperatures, while other men stayed home with their families. I missed birthday parties, school plays, and countless dinners, but I told myself it was worth it. The money I earned paid for Marcus to go to a good college in Chicago, where he now works as a marketing executive. It paid for Emily's law school tuition, where she is currently finishing her graduate degree. I sacrificed so much time, so much of myself, believing that I was building a secure future for the people I loved. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. Little things that should have raised questions but somehow never did. Linda had always been private about certain areas of the house, particularly the basement. She would go down there for hours, sometimes claiming she was organizing old boxes or looking for seasonal decorations. Whenever I offered to help, she would wave me off, saying she had her own system and did not want me messing it up. I thought it was just one of her quirks. Every marriage has those the little territories each person claims as their own. The basement was hers. I never pushed. There were other things, too. Phone calls she would take in another room, lowering her voice when I walked by. Credit card statements that arrived in her name only, which she explained away as rewards cards she was managing. Weekend trips to visit her sister Barbara that seemed to happen more frequently as the years went on. I accepted all of it without question. I was too tired from work to investigate, too trusting to suspect. And maybe if I am being honest with myself, I was too afraid to look closely. Some part of me sensed that the foundation of my life might not be as solid as I believed. But I buried that feeling deep down and kept going. The week before everything changed, Linda told me that Barbara was sick, some kind of respiratory infection that needed monitoring. Linda said she should fly down to Florida to help take care of her for a few weeks. I drove her to the airport on a gray Tuesday morning, kissed her goodbye at the departure gate, and told her not to worry about anything back home. I promised to keep the house warm and take care of everything. She smiled at me, that same smile I had fallen in love with 30 years earlier, and walked through security without looking back. I went home to an empty house that suddenly felt too large and too quiet. For the first 2 days, I kept myself busy with small projects around the property. I fixed a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. I reorganized the garage. I watched television until late at night, falling asleep on the couch, because our bed felt strange without Linda in it. On the third night, the temperature dropped to 15 degrees below zero. I woke up at 3 in the morning, shivering under a thin blanket, my breath visible in the cold air. The furnace had stopped working. I stumbled down to the basement in the darkness, fumbling for the light switch. The old furnace sat in the corner like a dead machine, cold and silent. I pressed buttons, checked the pilot light, did everything I could think of with my limited knowledge of heating systems. Nothing worked. By morning, the house was so cold, I could see frost forming on the inside of the windows. I called a heating repair company and begged them to send someone as soon as possible. The technician arrived around 10 in the morning. His name was Danny, a young man in his mid-30s with a friendly face and a toolbox that looked like it weighed more than he did. He shook my hand firmly and followed me inside, commenting on how cold the house had gotten overnight. I offered him coffee, which he accepted gratefully, and then he headed down to the basement while I waited upstairs. I sat on the living room couch, cradling my warm mug, listening to the distant sounds of Danny moving around below. I expected him to come back up within a few minutes with a diagnosis and a repair estimate. Instead, 20 minutes passed in silence. Then my phone buzzed with a text message. The number was unfamiliar, but the name Danny appeared above it. He must have gotten my contact information from the work order. I opened the message and read the words that would change everything. "Sir, there is a locked room down here. The furnace is behind it. Do you have the key?" I stared at my phone screen, reading the message over and over. A locked room that made no sense. Our basement was one large open space with concrete floors and exposed ceiling beams. There was the furnace, the water heater, the washer and dryer, and some metal shelving units filled with boxes. No rooms, no doors, nothing that required a key. I texted back quickly. "What do you mean a locked room? Where exactly are you?" His reply came seconds later, behind the big bookshelf against the back wall. I moved it to check the wiring and found a door. It is padlocked. The furnace ductwork goes through that room. My hands were trembling as I stood up from the couch. I walked to the basement stairs slowly, my heart pounding louder with each step. The wooden stairs creaked under my weight as I descended into the cold, dimly lit space below. Danny was standing near the back wall, his flashlight pointed at something I had never seen before. The large bookshelf that had always stood against that wall was pushed to one side, revealing a door frame that had been completely hidden behind it. The door itself was made of solid wood, painted the same gray color as the basement walls, almost invisible if you were not looking for it. A heavy padlock secured a metal latch near the handle. I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. This was my house. I had lived here for over 2 decades. How could there be a door in my own basement that I knew nothing about? Danny shifted uncomfortably beside me. "I am sorry, sir," he said quietly. "I did not mean to pry. I was just following the ductwork and noticed the shelf was blocking the airflow. When I moved it, I found this." I shook my head slowly. "I have no idea what this is," I admitted. "I have never seen this door before in my life." Danny pointed to the ceiling above us where the metal ductwork from the furnace disappeared through a gap near the hidden door. "The furnace vents go into that room," he explained. "Whatever is in there is connected to your heating system. I cannot fix the furnace properly without accessing that space." I pulled out my phone and called Linda. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the device. Danny cleared his throat awkwardly. "Do you want me to come back another time?" he offered. "Maybe when you can reach whoever has the key?" "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "No. This is my house. I need to know what is behind that door." I looked at Danny directly. "Can you open it?" He hesitated for a moment, glancing at the padlock. "I have tools that could break it," he said carefully. "But are you sure if someone put this here, they might not want anyone going inside?" "Someone in my own home hid a room from me," I replied. "I have every right to know what is in there." Danny nodded slowly, then reached into his toolbox and pulled out a heavy bolt cutter. He positioned the blades around the padlock shackle and squeezed. The metal gave way with a sharp snap that echoed through the basement. I reached past him and pushed the door open. What I saw inside stopped my heart. The room was approximately 200 square feet, about the size of a large bedroom. Unlike the rest of the basement, which was bare concrete and exposed utilities, this space had been finished completely. The walls were painted a soft cream color. The floor was covered with plush carpet. There was a full-sized bed against one wall, made up with expensive-looking bedding. A small dresser stood nearby with a mirror attached. In the corner sat a compact refrigerator and a microwave. It looked like a secret apartment hidden beneath my own home. But what drew my attention immediately were the photographs. They were everywhere. Framed pictures on the dresser, stuck to a bulletin board on the wall, propped up on the nightstand beside the bed. And in every single one of them, Linda was smiling next to a man I had never seen before. Danny quietly backed out of the room, mumbling something about giving me privacy. I barely heard him. I walked forward slowly, my eyes moving from photograph to photograph. Linda on a beach, her arm around the stranger's waist. Linda at a fancy restaurant, raising a glass of wine while he kissed her cheek. Linda in what looked like a hotel room, both of them dressed in bathrobes, looking happier than I had ever seen her with me. The man appeared to be roughly my age, maybe slightly younger. He had silver hair and a confident smile, the kind of smile that comes from money and success. He wore expensive clothes in every picture designer labels I could recognize, even though I could never afford them myself. Whoever he was, this was clearly not a casual acquaintance. My legs felt weak. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal so vast I could not comprehend it. How long had this been going on? How many times had Linda come down to this secret room while I was asleep upstairs or at work or watching television in the living room? Directly above, I noticed a nightstand drawer slightly ajar. With trembling fingers, I pulled it open and found a leather-bound journal inside. Linda's handwriting covered the pages in flowing script. I recognized it immediately. She had written cards and notes to me in that same handwriting for nearly 3 decades. I opened the journal to a random page and began to read. Victor came to see me today. Arthur was working the late shift, so we had the whole evening together. We ordered takeout and watched movies in bed like a real couple. Sometimes I wish this was my actual life, instead of the one upstairs. Victor understands me in ways Arthur never could. He sees me as a woman, not just a wife and mother. When I am with him, I feel alive again. My stomach lurched. I turned to another page. 7 years now. 7 years since I met Victor at that accounting conference in Indianapolis. I never expected it to become this, but here we are. Arthur pays for everything without ever asking questions. He is such a simple man. He works, he comes home, he eats, he sleeps. He never notices anything. Victor says I deserve more than that kind of life. He makes me feel like I am worth more than being someone's cook and housekeeper. I slammed the journal shut, gasping for air. This affair had been going on for 7 years. Nearly a quarter of my marriage had been a lie. But there was more. On the dresser, partially hidden behind a jewelry box, I found a stack of financial documents. Bank statements from an account I had never seen before, bearing only Linda's name. I flipped through the pages with growing horror. Monthly transfers from our joint checking account, small enough not to trigger suspicion, but large enough to add up over time. The current balance was over $180,000. She had been stealing from me for years, slowly, carefully siphoning off money from the accounts I trusted her to manage. Money I had earned working 60-hour weeks, climbing utility poles in thunderstorms, missing my children's milestones. All of it funneled into a secret account, while I remained oblivious. Beneath the bank statements, I found credit card bills. Cards opened in both our names that I had never applied for, carrying balances totaling $45,000 in debt. Linda had been living a double life funded entirely by my ignorance and my labor. The final blow came when I discovered a folder full of printed text messages. They appeared to be conversations between Linda and Marcus, my own son. I read them with eyes that burned from unshed tears. One message from Marcus read, "Mom, just be careful. Dad is clueless. Keep it that way." Another said, "Victor seems like a good guy. I am happy for you. Just make sure Dad never finds out. He would not understand." And from Linda, "Your father is too simple to ever suspect anything. He trusts me completely. That is his weakness." I dropped the folder onto the floor. My son knew. My 26-year-old son had known about his mother's affair and had actively helped her hide it from me. The child I had sacrificed everything for, whose college tuition I had paid, whose dreams I had supported at the cost of my own, had looked me in the eyes at family dinners and holiday gatherings while knowing his mother was betraying me in a secret room beneath our feet. I thought about Emily. Were there messages from her too? I searched through more papers and found a few exchanges indicating that she was also aware, though she seemed more uncomfortable with the situation than her brother. Still, she had remained silent. Both of my children had chosen their mother over their father. Danny's voice called down from the top of the basement stairs. "Sir, are you okay down there? Do you need anything?" I did not answer. I sat alone in that hidden room, surrounded by evidence of 28 years of lies, and felt something inside me shatter completely. I do not know how long I sat in that room. It might have been minutes or hours. Time lost all meaning as I tried to process what I had discovered. Eventually, I heard Danny come halfway down the stairs. "Sir," he called gently. "I need to leave soon, but I am worried about you. Is there someone I can call?" His words pulled me back to reality. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and forced myself to stand. "No," I called back, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "No, I am fine. Give me a few minutes." I knew I needed to think clearly. Acting on pure emotion would only make things worse. Linda had clearly been planning this double life for years, which meant she had prepared for contingencies. If I confronted her immediately, she might destroy evidence or spin the story in her favor. I needed to be smart. I spent the next hour methodically photographing everything in the room. Every picture on the wall, every page of the journal, every financial document, every printed text message. I used my phone to capture hundreds of images, making sure the dates and details were legible. Then I found a USB drive in the desk drawer and copied everything onto it as well. I uploaded the most important files to a cloud storage account that Linda did not know existed. Danny was waiting for me in the main basement when I finally emerged. He looked at me with genuine concern. "I am not going to ask what you found in there," he said quietly. "But if you need help, I know some good people. Lawyers, counselors, that sort of thing." I thanked him and asked about the furnace. He explained that the issue was actually a simple fix, just a faulty igniter that he had replaced while I was in the hidden room. The furnace was working again. The house would be warm tonight. Before he left, Danny handed me his personal business card. "Call me if you need anything," he said. And I mean anything. Some of us have been through similar situations. You do not have to go through this alone. I pocketed the card and shook his hand. Something about his kindness in that moment kept me from falling completely apart. After Danny left, I sat at the kitchen table and researched Victor on my laptop. It did not take long to find him. Victor Harrison, age 52, owner of Harrison Premier Properties, a successful real estate development company based in Columbus. His company website featured a smiling photograph that matched the face I had seen in all those pictures with my wife. The site also mentioned his loving wife, Diane, and their 3 children. So Victor was married too. Both of them had families. Both of them had been lying and cheating for 7 years, while their spouses remained in the dark. That evening, Linda called. Her voice was cheerful and oblivious, asking about my day, wondering if I had eaten properly. I forced myself to respond normally, even though every word felt like swallowing broken glass. I told her the furnace had been fixed. I told her I missed her. I told her to take care of Barbara and not worry about anything at home. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. The performance I had just given felt surreal, but I knew I needed more time to prepare. The next morning, I drove to the office of Gerald Patterson, a lawyer I had known since high school. Gerald had played football with me back when we both had full heads of hair and dreams of leaving our small town. He ended up becoming one of the best divorce attorneys in the county instead. We had lost touch over the years, but I trusted him. Gerald listened to my story without interruption, his face growing more serious with each revelation. When I showed him the photographs and documents on my phone, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "Arthur," he said slowly, "you have one of the strongest divorce cases I have ever seen. Financial fraud, identity theft, documented infidelity spanning years. In this state, with this evidence, you are going to come out ahead." He explained the legal steps we would need to take. Forensic accountants would examine the financial records. We would document everything before Linda knew what was coming. By the time she realized the game was over, the legal machinery would already be in motion. I signed the retainer agreement that afternoon. Over the following days, I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. I called Linda every evening, listening to her lies about Barbara's recovery. I texted Marcus and Emily, occasionally getting their usual brief and disinterested responses. I pretended nothing had changed while secretly preparing to dismantle the false life my wife had constructed. But the hardest part was not the legal preparation or the evidence gathering. The hardest part was sitting alone in that empty house at night, looking at family photographs on the walls and realizing that the people in those pictures did not exist. The loving wife, the respectful children, the happy family They were all illusions. I had spent 3 decades building a life that was never real. One night I called Marcus from the kitchen phone. I kept the conversation light, asking about his work, his apartment, his life in Chicago. He answered in monosyllables, clearly eager to end the call. Before we hung up, I told him I loved him. There was a pause on the line. "Yeah, you too," he said flatly. Then the connection ended. I stood there holding the phone, remembering the little boy who used to run into my arms when I came home from work. The teenager who asked me to teach him how to drive. The young man I had hugged goodbye when he left for college, both of us fighting back tears. Where had that person gone? Or had he ever really existed? Emily was only slightly warmer when I called her. She at least asked a few questions about how I was doing alone in the house. But I could hear the distance in her voice, the careful avoidance of anything meaningful. She knew what her mother was doing. She had chosen to protect the secret instead of protecting me. I had raised 2 children who saw me as nothing more than a source of income. A useful tool that could be manipulated and discarded when no longer needed. That realization hurt more than Linda's affair, more than the stolen money, more than all the lies combined. 2 weeks after my discovery, Linda flew home from Florida. I picked her up at the airport wearing my best performance of a devoted husband. I carried her luggage, opened her car door, asked about her sister's health. She chattered happily about Barbara's improvement and the warm Florida weather, never suspecting that her secret world had been exposed. That night, I suggested we have a family dinner to celebrate our upcoming 28th anniversary. Linda seemed surprised, but pleased. She called Marcus and Emily, convincing them to come home for the weekend. I could hear her on the phone using her most persuasive voice, promising a special family gathering. They arrived on Saturday afternoon. Marcus drove down from Chicago in his expensive car wearing a designer jacket that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck. Emily flew in from Boston, where her law school is located. She hugged me briefly, her embrace feeling hollow and obligatory. We sat around the dining room table that evening, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals over the years. I had cooked Linda's favorite dishes, spending the entire day in the kitchen. Roast chicken with rosemary garlic, mashed potatoes, green beans, almondine. A feast worthy of celebration. The conversation was surface level and awkward. Marcus talked about his marketing campaigns. Emily discussed her classes. Linda smiled and nodded, and occasionally reached over to touch my hand affectionately. They all seemed relieved that nothing was expected of them beyond showing up. Halfway through the meal, I stood up from my chair. Everyone looked at me expectantly. "I have a special gift for this occasion," I announced. "Something I have been working on for a while." Linda's face softened into what she probably thought was a loving expression. "Arthur, you did not have to do anything special." I walked over to the television mounted on the wall and turned it on. I plugged in the USB drive I had prepared, the one containing all the evidence I had gathered from the hidden room. "I think you should all see this," I said calmly. "As a family." The first image appeared on the screen. It was a photograph of the hidden room showing the bed, the dresser, the decorated walls. Linda's face went pale. Marcus stopped chewing. Emily's fork clattered onto her plate. "What is this?" Linda asked, her voice strained. "This is the room I found in our basement," I replied. "The room you have been hiding from me for 5 years. The room where you have been meeting Victor Harrison since before our son graduated from college." I clicked to the next image. Linda and Victor on the beach embracing. Then another. Linda and Victor at dinner. Then another. The photographs kept coming one after another, undeniable proof of a 7-year affair. Linda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Arthur, let me explain." I held up my hand. "I have not finished." The screen changed to show pages from her journal. I read several passages aloud in a steady voice, including the ones where she called me simple and clueless. I showed the bank statements documenting 6 years of stolen money. I displayed the credit card bills she had secretly accumulated in both our names. Finally, I showed the text messages between Linda and Marcus, the ones where my own son advised his mother to keep me in the dark, the ones where he called Victor a good guy and wished her happiness in her affair. The room was absolutely silent. Linda stood, frozen tears streaming down her face. Marcus stared at the television with his jaw clenched, refusing to meet my eyes. Emily had both hands pressed over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. I turned off the television and faced my family. For 28 years, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions raging inside me. I gave everything I had to this family. I worked 60-hour weeks. I missed birthdays and holidays. I climbed utility poles in ice storms while you stayed warm inside houses that my labor paid for. I trusted you completely, Linda. And you used that trust to steal from me, to lie to me, and to build a secret life with another man. I looked at Marcus. And you, my son. You knew. You knew what your mother was doing, and you helped her hide it. You treated me like a fool while I was paying for your apartment, your car, your entire lifestyle. Marcus finally met my eyes, his expression defiant. What did you expect? He shot back. You were never around. You were always working. Mom deserved some happiness. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I did not let it show. I expected loyalty, I replied quietly. I expected honesty. I expected the basic decency of not actively helping your mother betray your father. Clearly, I expected too much. I turned to Emily, who was sobbing quietly. I know you knew too, I said more gently. I know you were not as involved as your brother, but you stayed silent. You chose to protect the lie instead of protecting me. Emily looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I did not know what to do, she whispered. I was scared. I did not want to be in the middle. I nodded slowly. I understand that. But now you need to understand something too. Actions have consequences. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I handed it to Linda. This is a divorce petition, I said. You will be receiving official notice from my attorney on Monday. Based on the evidence of financial fraud and infidelity, I am seeking a 70% division of assets. My lawyer tells me the court will likely agree given the documentation. Linda's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. Arthur, please, she begged. We can work this out. 28 years. Does that mean nothing to you? It meant everything to me, I replied. But apparently it meant nothing to you. You made your choice 7 years ago. Now I am making mine. I looked at Marcus one last time. Do not contact me unless you are ready to apologize and take responsibility for your part in this. Until then, we have nothing to say to each other. I turned and walked toward the front door. Arthur, wait. Linda called after me. Where are you going? I paused at the door and looked back at the family I had built and lost. I'm going to start my life over, I said. The life you stole from me. The life I deserve. Then I walked out into the cold night air, leaving behind everything I had known for nearly 3 decades. The divorce proceedings took 4 months. Gerald Patterson earned every dollar of his fee, systematically dismantling Linda's attempts to minimize her liability. The forensic accountants traced every transfer she had made to her secret account. The credit card companies confirmed that I had never authorized the accounts opened in my name. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Linda hired her own attorney, a slick young man from Columbus, who tried to argue that her affair was a response to emotional neglect. He claimed that I had been an absent husband, too focused on work to meet her needs. The judge listened politely, then looked at the documentation showing that I had worked those long hours specifically to support the family while Linda was stealing from our accounts to fund her double life. The final settlement gave me 68% of our combined assets. The house was sold, and after paying off the fraudulent credit card debt, I received the majority of the proceeds. Linda was ordered to return the money she had siphoned into her secret account, though collecting it would take additional legal action. She was also required to pay a portion of my attorney fees. On the day the divorce was finalized, I drove past the house where I had lived for over 20 years. The new owners were already moving in a young couple with 2 small children. The woman was carrying a box toward the front door, while the man held a toddler in his arms. They looked happy and hopeful the way Linda and I must have looked when we first bought that house. I wished them better luck than I had. Victor Harrison did not escape unscathed either. I had sent copies of the photographs and journal entries to his wife Diane, along with a brief letter explaining how I had discovered them. She filed for divorce within weeks. According to local gossip, she took him for a significant portion of his real estate business. His professional reputation also suffered when word spread through the business community. People in small towns talk, and they do not quickly forget. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Linda moved in with Victor after the divorce. Apparently, their relationship deteriorated rapidly once it was no longer a secret fantasy. Victor stripped of his marriage, his reputation, and much of his wealth became bitter and resentful. Linda discovered that the romantic partner she had idealized for 7 years was quite different when forced to deal with real-life problems. The fairy tale she had imagined turned into something far less appealing. But honestly, I did not care what happened to either of them. I had spent too many years caring about people who did not care about me. It was time to start caring about myself. I used my share of the house sale to buy a small cottage near a lake about an hour outside of Columbus. It was nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a simple kitchen, and a porch overlooking the water. But it was mine, free and clear. No mortgage, no debt, no lies hidden in the basement. I retired from the utility company with a modest pension that covered my basic expenses. For the first time in 30 years, I did not have to wake up before dawn to work a job that slowly destroyed my body. I could sleep until sunrise, eat breakfast at my own pace, and spend my days exactly as I chose. And what I chose mostly was to reconnect with the parts of myself I had abandoned. I started fishing again. As a young man before marriage and children and careers, I had loved sitting by the water with a rod and reel, waiting for that gentle tug on the line. Linda had never understood the appeal. She thought it was boring, a waste of time. So I stopped going. I gave up something I loved because she did not value it. Now I fished almost every day. I would walk down to the dock behind my cottage at dawn, cast my line into the still water, and simply exist. Sometimes I caught fish. Sometimes I caught nothing. It did not matter. What mattered was the peace, the silence, the feeling of being exactly where I was supposed to be. I also reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my years of constant work. Guys I had known in high school, co-workers I had lost touch with after they retired. We would meet at a local diner for breakfast, or gather on my porch for beer and conversation on summer evenings. These were men who understood what I had been through, some because they had experienced similar betrayals, others simply because they had lived long enough to know that life rarely turns out the way you expect. Danny, the furnace technician, who had inadvertently uncovered my wife's secrets, became a close friend. We met for coffee every few weeks, talking about everything and nothing. He had been through his own divorce years earlier, a messy situation involving his ex-wife and his former best friend. He understood the particular pain of being betrayed by people you trusted completely. One day, sitting on his back porch, Danny asked me if I was angry. I thought about it for a moment. "Not anymore," I said. I was furious at first, devastated. But anger takes energy, and I spent too many years giving my energy to people who did not deserve it. Now I just want peace. Danny nodded slowly. That is the trick, is it not, learning to let go without letting them off the hook? I smiled. Something like that. About 8 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter in the mail. The return address showed Emily's name and her apartment in Boston. I sat on my porch for a long time, holding the envelope without opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. My daughter had known about her mother's affair and chosen silence. She had watched me be humiliated and robbed without saying a word. Why should I give her the chance to make excuses now? But another part of me remembered the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories. The teenager who cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke up with her. The young woman who had hugged me tight at her college graduation, whispering, "Thank you for everything, Dad." I opened the letter. It was 4 pages long, handwritten in the same careful script Emily had used since elementary school. She told me she was sorry. Not just sorry for staying silent, but sorry for the way she had treated me for years. She admitted that she and Marcus had been influenced by their mother's attitude toward me, absorbing Linda's dismissive view of their father without ever questioning it. She wrote about how the divorce had forced her to see things differently. She had started therapy a few months ago, trying to understand why she had participated in the betrayal of someone who had only ever shown her love. Her therapist had helped her see the family dynamics more clearly, the way Linda had manipulated all of them, the way Arthur had been systematically devalued and used. Emily did not ask for forgiveness. She wrote that she knew she had not earned it. She only wanted me to know that she understood now, and that she would spend the rest of her life trying to be a better person than she had been. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face by the end. Then I walked inside, sat down at my kitchen table, and wrote her back. I told her that I appreciated her honesty. I told her that I was proud of her for seeking help and doing the hard work of self-examination. I told her that I loved her and had always loved her even during the worst moments of the past year. But I also told her that trust once broken takes a long time to rebuild. I was not ready to pretend everything was fine. I was not ready for family dinners and holiday visits and the comfortable intimacy we had lost. What I was ready for was a beginning. Small steps, honest conversations, a gradual process of reconnection that would take as long as it needed to take. Emily wrote back immediately, agreeing to my terms. We began exchanging letters every few weeks, then emails, then occasional phone calls. The conversations were awkward at first, full of long silences and careful word choices. But slowly, over many months, something began to heal. Marcus never reached out. From what Emily told me, he remained defiant, insisting that he had done nothing wrong. He blamed me for destroying the family by exposing the truth instead of accepting the situation quietly. He still visited Linda occasionally, maintaining his alliance with the mother who had taught him that loyalty and honesty were optional when inconvenient. I grieved for my son, for the relationship we might have had, for the man he might have become if he had been raised with different values. But I also accepted that I could not force him to change. He was an adult, now responsible for his own choices. If he ever wanted to repair what was broken between us, he knew where to find me. Until then, I had made my peace with his absence. 1 year after I discovered the hidden room in my basement, I sat on the dock behind my cottage, watching the sun set over the lake. The water glowed orange and pink, reflecting colors that seemed too beautiful to be real. A fish jumped somewhere in the distance, sending ripples across the smooth surface. I thought about everything that had happened. The marriage I thought was solid. The family I thought was loyal. The life I thought was meaningful. All of it turned out to be built on lies and delusions. I had spent 3 decades trusting the wrong people, sacrificing for those who saw me only as a resource to be exploited. But here is the strange thing. Sitting on that dock, breathing the clean evening air, I realized I was not bitter. I was not angry. I was not consumed by the desire for revenge or the need to see my enemies suffer. Those feelings had burned through me in the early months, hot and destructive. Now they had faded, replaced by something quieter and more sustainable. I had learned, finally, to value myself. Not because of what I could provide for others, but simply because I existed and deserved to exist with dignity. I had stopped measuring my worth by how much I earned or how much I sacrificed. I started measuring it by how honestly I lived and how peacefully I slept at night. The truth had set me free. It was painful truth, devastating truth, the kind of truth that demolishes everything you thought you knew. But on the other side of that destruction was something new. A chance to build a life based on reality instead of illusion. A chance to be seen and valued for who I actually was. I picked up my fishing rod and cast the line out over the water. The hook sank beneath the surface, disappearing into depths I could not see. I settled back in my chair and waited patient and calm for whatever might come next. If you are watching this and you have been through something similar, I want you to know that you are not alone. Betrayal by the people closest to you is one of the deepest wounds a person can suffer. It makes you question everything, including your own judgment and worth. But you can survive it. You can even thrive after it if you are willing to do the hard work of rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Do not let anyone tell you that your pain is not valid. Do not let anyone convince you to stay in a situation where you are being used and disrespected. And do not let anger consume you, no matter how justified that anger might be. Anger is a fire that burns the person carrying it more than anyone else. Instead, choose truth. Choose dignity. Choose yourself. The sun dropped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky full of stars. I reeled in my empty line, picked up my tackle box, and walked back toward my cottage. Through the window, I could see the warm glow of the lamp I had left on in the living room. My small home, my peaceful life, my fresh start. I smiled as I climbed the porch steps. The locked room in my basement had destroyed my old life completely. But it had also given me something I never knew I was missing. Freedom. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that could have happened. You just have to survive long enough to see it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything you thought you knew about someone? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you peace, I wish you truth, and I wish you the courage to choose yourself when no one else will. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, no matter how dark things get, there is always a dock somewhere with your name on it, waiting for you to sit down, cast a line, and start again.